So Dan Shockey invited me to do a presentation on a bicycle race I did in France back in August, and also on cars I saw in France. Now, I think this is Dan's way of payback for me retiring from being your newsletter editor, and he getting stuck with the job. No, I'm just kidding, Dan. Actually, would really like to thank Dan for stepping up and taking over the Octagon. Let's give Dan a round of applause here. He's doing a tremendous job. Now, this bike race is actually the reason why I wanted to quit being the newsletter editor. I needed some time to train for it. Some history about this race. It began in 1891. Actually, it's the oldest bicycle race in the world, still held today. In this race, Michelin was just a fledgling, unknown company. Everyone was riding solid tires, but for this race, Michelin invented the first pneumatic tire for this gentleman right over here, Charles Torrens, who actually ended up winning the race, and that kind of spawned an entire generation of pneumatic tires that you use on your cars today, and is responsible for it's how Michelin became a kind of a giant in the tire industry to this day. Now, for this race, doctors were extremely skeptical that anyone could even finish the race. In fact, some of them equated doing this race as overdosing on arsenic. They didn't believe people could finish it, and yet 300 people signed up, 200 people actually started the race, and 100 people actually finished the race, which was an amazing feat back then. You look at Charles's bike here. I don't even think he had gears. This is on cobblestone roads, and his bicycle must have weighed twice as much as mine, and yet this guy finished in 72 hours. He would have beat me. Anyhow, this race inspired the creation of the Tour de France and the modern Olympics. So lots of history behind this race. Now, why is this race considered so prestigious nowadays? Well, first of all, let's look at this map over here. This is a map of the entire France, and this red dot is Paris. This one is Brest. Basically, you have to go from Paris over to Brest and then back. Think of it as doing a race from right here down to LA and back on a bicycle. And then imagine doing it in 90 hours. So basically, you're doing this in one shot. It's even kind of demanding for someone to drive that distance. We're talking about 762 miles here. Logistically, it's difficult enough to hold such a race, so it's only held every 4 years. The next year will be 2007. I kind of consider this the Olympics for myself. How do you qualify for this race? Well, you merely have to do a bike race of 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers, 400 kilometers, and 600 kilometers within certain time limits, getting the necessary stamps to certify that you've done this race, and then you can go ahead and send in your registration for Paris-Brest-Paris and enter. So let's talk about the race. Well, basically, I flew in to Charles de Gaulle Airport and just took mass transit. Didn't rent a car. I wandered around with my large camping backpack and this bike case. Here I am lugging this bicycle case from the metro station to my hotel in Paris. Now, I thought you would like this picture because it has a cute little mini in here. There's actually quite a few minis, both old style and new style, in France. Eventually, I transferred over to Versailles, and here's a picture of putting my bicycle together in a hotel room. Hotel rooms in France are not quite like those here. Basically, imagine a Motel 6. Now imagine a room half the size of that room in your Motel 6. That's basically your 3-star hotel in France. Here I am just hours before the start of the race. You can see my setup here, my trusty Cannondale, which I've been riding for the last 10 years, at a rack with a bag, and I use 2 of these LED lights, last a long time, really bright, light my way during the night because, again, I had to ride for basically 4 nights here. The race actually started that night, 10 p.m. on Monday. Kind of a crazy start. So many participants, all anxious to start. Here I am, going through the countryside, French countryside, even in August, and this was a couple of days after the heat wave that killed 20,000 people in France ended. What you can see, it's still very green and lush and just absolutely beautiful. This is a bridge in Brest, halfway point. Lots of country homes out there, lots of flowers. I really love those French homes. A lot different from American homes, where American homes are usually dominated in the front view by a garage. Well, most French homes, there's no remnants of a garage out in the front at all. Here I am passing by a garage. Spectators in France were great. People were out there en masse, either handing out water, handing out food. Actually, at this garage, some guy ran over with a crepe in his hand to give me, and it was just so awesome. France also had things like this bicycle decorated with flowers out there to kind of commemorate Paris-Brest-Paris. As I got closer to Paris, became quite a bit more wooded. You can also see that the course was not flat. In fact, I would say there was not a single stretch over a mile that was completely flat. It was up and down all the time. And actually, that's kind of my preferred type of terrain. It's nothing super steep or super long, just up and down all the time. But I have to say, at about kilometer 1,000, I started just to mutter to myself, man, there's just too much climbing. There's just too much climbing. But I made it. Here I am at the finish. Well, what a sight, what a race. Race summary. Took me 3 days, 4 nights, 84.5 hours. That included 12 hours of sleep. I was one of about 400 Americans to participate in this edition of Paris-Brest-Paris. There were about 4,000 cyclists worldwide who participated. This is just a picture of me back in my hotel in Versailles, really feeling proud, although very stinky. I haven't showered in 5 days, if you can imagine that. So, right after this picture, jumped in the shower. You're probably wondering a few things like, how did I eat? Because, again, I assume this entirely self-supported, like almost everyone in Paris-Brest-Paris. This bag right here really was for extra clothing to survive cold nights, and had some emergency tools and spare tire or spare tubes. But I didn't have the capacity to hold food and water for 4 days. So what did I do? Well, at checkpoints, you could buy food. Here I have some mashed potatoes, baguette. But after the first checkpoint, I'd spent so long over there. It took me about an hour just standing in line, sitting down, eating my food. After that, I resolved that in order to save time, this is time I could be sleeping. I would just stop off at every other village or so. In France, there are villages every 20, 30 miles. And I would go to a little grocery store or cafe, buy cookies or cake or bread. Here at one of the checkpoints I bought a little baguette. Now, that's actually kind of what prompted my first food crisis. So I buy this baguette, and you're looking at this baguette thinking, oh, it's about the size of a loaf of bread almost. And you would think, oh, there's a lot of energy in that. But bought it, packed it away, munched on it. A few hours later, just ravenous. These baguettes have more air than calories. And I was just starving. No more food, and I was still many, many miles away from the next village. Well, what was the solution? Well, eventually I passed by this McDonald's and had this vanilla milkshake. Really saved me there. After that, then I kind of learned my lesson. No longer was going to buy baguette only this long. I would buy baguette this long. You're also wondering, how did I sleep? Most of the time I was just sleeping on the grass or in cornfields. Now, many other people would sleep at a checkpoint on the floor on cardboard, and that's actually what I did a couple times, and that's where I got most of my sleep. Actually, if we back up here, my first sleep crisis occurred at only mile 30 or so. And this was pretty disastrous, I thought. I mean, here we are just a couple hours into the race now. Again, this started at 10 p.m., so this is around midnight. I'm going down the road, and I'm falling asleep, weaving all over the place. And in fact, a British guy behind me had to even yell at me at one point, "Wake up! Well, why don't you try taking a lay down?" So eventually, after say another 70 miles or so, I did try a lay down, a little nap for about 25 minutes, and that was good for the rest of the day. And after that, then I was making such good time that I even let myself sleep in one of these checkpoints on the floor instead of in a cornfield. However, there are still points that I was tired even when there's daylight out. So what could I do? I had to just take a nap, and here I am, just laying in some grass, with my helmet over my head. And actually, this episode was pretty funny because, so here I am sleeping, and about 20 minutes later, I wake up, and about 6 inches from my face is this video camera right in my face. It was a video crew for Paris-Brest-Paris, and then they even started interviewing me, and here I am, half asleep, completely incoherent, but I'm trying to reply, well, first in French, then in English when that clearly was not working. And I even talked to them for about 5 minutes, and all this time they just must have been laughing. They must have just thought, man, this guy is, this is a pretty comical moment here. Last thing I would like to talk about in this presentation, or actually about this race, is a mechanical problem I had. And I bring this up because rumor has it, Dan Chalky actually nominated me for the Burnt Spark Plug Award because of this mechanical problem, which I thought was just hilarious because this is a bicycle race, not having anything to do with cars or MGs. But actually, there is some MG content here. Now the problem was at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday night, my front shifter cable partly severed and frayed so badly that I could not shift my front derailleur. And the only way I was going to be able to remove it was to cut it. Now, I didn't have cable cutters on me, but I did have a spare cable. So basically, I just have to cut through the old cable. So to do this, what do I do without cable cutters? Well, I brought along this little pseudo Swiss Army knife sent to me by Shade Tree Motors when I ordered $10 worth of parts. And so here I was with this tiny little blade, completely dull, and I'm trying to cut strand by strand. Here I am just hacking away. It took me about 10 minutes to cut through the old cable, and then I put in my new cable, and I had to cut it again because it had extra length. So here I am cutting away. But anyways, this little thing saved me that night. So I wanted to thank Skip Kelsey. I'm not sure if Skip is here, but thank you for sending me this cheap little Swiss Army knife. It did save me that night.